Once upon a time, there was a peaceful kingdom ruled by a virtuous king and queen. More than anything, they wished for a child. One winter's night, a blizzard swept through their land, blotting out the kingdom in a bitter storm of snow and ice, but leaving them a most precious gift. A princess was born, and to honor the night she arrived, her parents named the girl Snow White. As she grew, the king and queen taught Snow White that the bounty of the land belonged to all who tended it. They showed her how to rule with love, for someday her destiny would be to lead. The kingdom itself was a place where magic and light filled the air. People lived in harmony with nature, sharing the treasures of the earth and the fruits of their labor. The abundance and generosity of the land and its people made the kingdom shine with a golden light. Snow White's early life was filled with joy and lessons of good, true, and fair leadership. Her future as a leader seemed bright and destined for greatness. However, tragedy struck the kingdom when Snow White's mother fell ill and passed away, leaving the king and the kingdom in mourning. In the midst of this sorrow, an enchantress from a far-off land arrived at the palace. Her beauty was mesmerizing and seemed to possess otherworldly powers. She quickly won the king's heart and married him, but unbeknownst to all, she had sinister intentions. The enchantress, now the new queen, cared only about her own beauty and power. To maintain her vanity, she relied on a magic mirror that would affirm her as the fairest of them all. As long as the mirror confirmed her beauty, she felt secure in her wicked reign. Soon after her marriage to the king, the evil queen manipulated events to seize control of the kingdom. She fabricated a perilous threat from the southern kingdom, prompting the good king to lead a campaign to protect his people. Tragically, the king never returned, leaving the kingdom vulnerable to the queen's greed and cruelty. She turned the farmers into soldiers loyal only to her, plundering the kingdom's riches and consolidating her power. Snow White, now a young lady, found herself reduced to a mere servant, a scullery maid locked away within the castle's cold stone walls. Despite her stepdaughter's servitude, as long as the magic mirror affirmed the queen's beauty as supreme, Snow White remained safe from the queen's growing jealousy. But the realm outside the castle was changing. The land that once flourished under the kind rule of Snow White's parents now lay in despair. The fields were barren, and the people desolate, their spirits crushed by the queen's oppressive rule. However, the memory of the good times lingered in their hearts, sparking a flicker of hope that Snow White, their lost princess, might one day return and restore their land to its former glory. One day, while going about her chores, Snow White encountered Jonathan, the leading figure of a band of thieves who had broken into the palace pantry. Hungry and desperate, Jonathan and his crew sought sustenance that had been hoarded by the queen. Despite his cynical demeanor, Snow White saw the goodness in Jonathan. When the guards captured him, sentencing him to be tied to the gates, Snow White risked her safety to free him, providing him with food and momentary refuge. This small act of kindness would set in motion a series of events far beyond Snow White's control. The same day, in a twist of fate, the magic mirror announced a devastating prediction for the queen. Snow White had become the fairest in the land. Consumed by rage and envy, the queen ordered her loyal huntsman to take Snow White into the deepest part of the forest and kill her, bringing back her heart in a jeweled box as proof. However, the huntsman could not bring himself to harm the innocent girl. Instead, he warned her of the queen's cruel intentions and urged her to flee as far as possible. Fearful yet determined, Snow White ran into the forest, guided by friendly woodland creatures to a small, secluded cottage. Exhausted, she fell asleep, only to awaken surrounded by the cottage's curious owners, 7 dwarfs named Doc, Grumpy, Bashful, Sleepy, Sneezy, Happy, and Dopey. The dwarfs, realizing her dire situation, took pity on Snow White and agreed to let her stay with them, offering her protection and companionship. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the queen, learning from the magic mirror that Snow White was still alive, imprisoned the huntsman and initiated a relentless manhunt to find and destroy Snow White. As days turned into weeks, Snow White adapted to her new life with the dwarfs, who grew fond of her kind-hearted and gentle nature. Unbeknownst to them, Jonathan roamed the forest, surviving on the edge of danger. Driven by a sense of loyalty and burgeoning feelings for Snow White, he sought information about the missing king, hoping to find a way to rescue both the king and the kingdom from the queen's clutches. In a pivotal encounter, Snow White and Jonathan reunited and joined forces to fend off pursuing guards. Their shared struggles and close encounters in the forest deepened the connection between Snow White and Jonathan, leading them to realize their mutual feelings of affection. Despite the warmth of their companionship, Jonathan decided to continue his quest to locate the missing king, believing it to be key in overthrowing the queen. However, his journey was cut short when the queen's guards captured him and imprisoned him within her dark, formidable dungeon. Crafty and manipulative, the evil queen concocted a new scheme. She retreated to her hidden chambers, using dark sorcery to transform herself into an innocuous peddler woman. Her malicious intent was concealed within an innocently appearing yet deadly poisoned apple, imbued with the curse of the sleeping death. Disguised and armed with this cursed fruit, the queen sought out the secluded cottage of the 7 dwarfs. One fateful morning, after the dwarfs had left for work, the queen arrived at the cottage. With cunning and deceit, she tricked Snow White into believing she was an ally of Jonathan's. The queen's veiled words and temptation led Snow White to bite into the poisoned apple. As Snow White collapsed into an eternal slumber, the queen took a twisted pleasure in revealing the bitter truth. She had murdered Snow White's father, the good king. Having completed her wicked mission, the queen retreated to her palace, confident in her victory. When the dwarfs returned to the cottage, they found Snow White lifeless, her beauty preserved in death's sleep. The dwarfs, inconsolable and grieving, placed Snow White in a glass coffin, unable to part from her even in death. Their sorrow was shared by the animals and creatures of the forest, who mourned the loss of their friend and gentle princess. Inside the dark dungeon of the castle, Jonathan managed to escape with the help of the loyal huntsman. Racing against time, he reached the dwarf's cottage and found Snow White seemingly lifeless. In a tearful and desperate farewell, Jonathan kissed Snow White, breaking the spell of the sleeping death and awakening her. Overjoyed, Snow White rallied the dwarfs and Jonathan's band of thieves, preparing to overthrow the tyrannical queen and restore peace to the kingdom. Armed with determination and the support of her newfound friends, Snow White led the charge to reclaim her rightful throne. Snow White confronted the evil queen in a climactic showdown within the castle walls. The queen, in a last-ditch effort, taunted Snow White with the throne, goading her to take a diamond dagger and kill her. Snow White, driven by the values instilled in her by her parents, refused to resort to violence. She instead reminded the people of their past, evoking memories of the kingdom's former glory under her parents' wise and kind rule. The guards, deeply moved and inspired by Snow White's words, turned against the queen, siding with the civilians who longed for change. Enraged and desperate, the queen tried to attack Snow White. But the dwarfs and Jonathan's loyal thieves defended the princess, keeping her safe. The magic mirror, witnessing the queen's unraveling, declared that Snow White would always be fairer than the queen because of her kindness and justice. In a final act of defiance and desperation, the queen attempted to destroy the magic mirror, the source of her powers. However, as she shattered the mirror, its true power was revealed. The queen herself turned into glass, ultimately disappearing into a vortex as the mirror repaired itself. The queen's reign of terror ended as abruptly as it began, consumed by the same vanity that had driven her to madness. The kingdom, now free from the queen's tyranny, erupted in celebration. Snow White, their beloved princess, was rightfully crowned as the new queen. Her compassionate rule restored the kingdom to its former splendor, bringing prosperity and happiness to the land once more. Snow White's journey from a benevolent princess to a scullery maid and finally to a revered queen symbolized the triumph of good over evil, kindness over cruelty, and justice over oppression. The film's retelling of Snow White is rooted in rich thematic elements of love, sacrifice, and the enduring power of kindness. Snow White's character arc beautifully showcases her growth from an innocent child, through her struggles and suffering, into a wise and just ruler. Her unwavering faith and goodness, even in the face of adversity, serves as an inspiration for both her subjects and the viewers. Jonathan's character adds depth and complexity to the traditional tale. His transition from a cynical thief to a loyal companion and protector of Snow White represents the transformative power of love and the impact of compassion. His quest to find the king parallels Snow White's journey, emphasizing themes of loyalty and purpose. The seven dwarfs, often depicted as mere comic relief, play a crucial role in this version, embodying the virtues of friendship, loyalty, and bravery. Their acceptance of Snow White and willingness to protect her reflect the inherent goodness that still exists in the kingdom despite the queen's evil reign. The evil queen's obsession with vanity and power, symbolized by the magic mirror, serves as a cautionary tale against the dangers of envy and superficiality. Her eventual demise, brought about by her own actions, underscores the narrative that true beauty lies in one's character and actions rather than physical appearance. Foreshadowing is subtly woven throughout the story, particularly through the recurring motifs of mirrors and reflections. Snow White's growth and transformation are often hinted at through reflective surfaces, suggesting an introspective journey leading to self-realization and empowerment. The omnipresent mirror not only marks the queen's relationship with herself but also heralds her downfall, as her external beauty fades in light of Snow White's inner virtue. The ending of Snow White is significant as it cements the triumph of innate goodness and the restoration of natural order. Snow White ascends the throne, not through force or vengeance, but through righteousness and compassion. This resolution reinforces the message that true leadership is grounded in love for people and integrity, qualities that Snow White consistently embodies. When comparing this film to similar works in the fantasy genre, such as other live-action reimaginings of classic fairy tales, Snow White, 2025, stands out for its depth in character development and underlying social commentary. While it retains the magical elements and nostalgic charm of the original tale, it also infuses contemporary themes of empowerment, resilience, and social justice. In Snow White, 2025, the Queen's mirror can be seen as a symbol of superficial judgment and societal pressures on appearance, a topic as relevant today as when the Brothers Grimm first penned this tale. Snow White's rejection of the throne through violent means in favor of compassionate leadership challenges traditional notions of power and authority, promoting a more humane approach to governance. In conclusion, Snow White, 2025, offers a profound and enriching retelling of a timeless fairy tale. It merges the enchanting allure of the original with modern themes of empowerment and kindness. Snow White's journey, full of trials and triumphs, reaffirms the invaluable virtues of courage, love, and justice, ensuring her story remains a beacon of hope and inspiration across generations.